What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, I'm going to go through some of the things that we've learned during pre-season. So I've got a lot of notes from some of the final pre-season games, which could have an impact on game week 1. We've got some of the transfer speculation, injuries that have happened that could have an impact on certain players. Loads of stuff in this one. So if you enjoy it, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. So let's start with some notes from the final pre-season games, because they're often a good indicator in terms of what might happen in game week 1. It doesn't guarantee that the lineups will be exactly the same, but it gives us some insight into what managers might be thinking. It's worth saying, to get this video out on Monday morning, I'm having to record it Sunday morning. So some teams are playing a second game on Sunday, and you've got stuff like the Community Shield between Liverpool and Palace. So that won't be covered here, but anything major that happens in those games, I've got plenty of videos planned this week. I can cover it in them instead. So just in case I don't mention something that you think I probably should, it will likely be mentioned in a future video. Man United, first of all, they played the usual formation under Amorim, wing backs, 2 10s behind a number 9. Amad Diallo was right wing back. Dorgu was left wing back. They look to be first choice. Dorgu's obviously 4.5 million defender. Definitely someone worth considering as part of a rotation. Burnley at home in 3. Sunderland at home in 7 is quite good. Amad Diallo, I know in those wing back positions, players obviously get forward and help the attack, but there is some defensive work there as well. And so for a 4.5 million defender in FPL, that seems okay. A 6.5 million midfielder, I'm not sure I can get on board with that. So I think he would probably be an ignore for me. Mason Mount played number 9. Behind him, it was Cunha and Mbeumo. Now, Mount's not going to play very much. That was just a signal to Højlund that you're not needed this year. And obviously, Šeško's come in now, so he's going to play that role. And Cunha and Mbeumo are mostly going to play in those number 10 positions. So you could consider them. I still think I would probably ignore them for game week 1. But if you want to go there for 8 million, you absolutely could. Mbeumo took some set pieces from the right-hand side. Fernandes took them from the left. Now, if Cunha and Mbeumo are primarily going to play in those number 10 roles, Fernandes is going to play central midfield, and that's what he did yesterday. Don't get me wrong, he's not going to sit there as a number 6 and never get forward. He got forward plenty of times yesterday. I still don't know if it's worth paying 9 million for him. Interestingly, though, he got an assist from an own goal off a corner. He played the whole game as always. Like, he got his 2 points for appearance points at least. So you got 5 points for the assist. He also got 12 defensive contributions. That's another +2. And if you assume that he's quite good for bonus as well, that 1 assist in a Premier League game probably would have got him 3 bonus as well. So despite him playing central midfield, he still walked away with a 10-pointer. So he's going to get returns. I'm still not quite sure myself whether it's worth paying 9 million for a central midfielder primarily, but he's going to be consistent enough, I think. With Everton, interestingly, Barry, 6 million forward, started ahead of Beto. Beto is now a complete ignore for me. He's played a lot during pre-season. He might start game week 1, but his minutes are nowhere near secure long term. And David Moyes has spoken about how he hasn't seen enough from him in pre-season. Would I go for Barry? Maybe if you want to take a punt. I think he could be a good option if he gets regular minutes. But you've got to think there's probably going to be early substitutions there. And Beto might get the odd game here or there. I think Barry will be first choice this season. It just depends how quickly that happens and how quickly he can go to playing week in, week out, like close to 90 minutes every week. I just don't see that right now. So it'd probably be enough to ignore both of them. Interestingly, Dewsbury Hall was thrown straight in. So he's not been at Everton that long since signing. 5 million. Basically played as a number 10. So they had him, Idrissa Gana Gueye, and James Garner as the 3 midfielders. So he's going to be the more advanced one. I think he's going to be pretty much nailed in that position. I think they've brought him in to play him regularly. And I think for 5 million, that is a really interesting option to look at. I don't think it makes him essential because I don't know if I can guarantee his minutes are secure right now. But if he's going to play like a advanced 8 or a number 10 for 5 million with the fixtures they've got, if you really want to cheap out that midfield spot, that's probably the 5 million player to look at right now. They're still being heavily linked to Grealish. If Grealish comes in and he gets fit, he'll play on the left. So where does Njai go? Does he go to the right or centrally? Does that affect Dewsbury Hall? I don't know. But I think he's come in to play very regular minutes for Everton. Also, their first choice defence was available, although Mykolenko did get injured. I don't know how long he's going to be out for. Their new left back is only 4.5 million. But I still think if you go Everton defence, think about paying the money for Tarkowski. 5.5 million. I think I saw someone say he had the defensive contributions he needed to get +2 points in 67 minutes in that game. He's just a monster for them. So Mykolenko might be injured. We'll have to wait and see. But otherwise, most of their other defenders are available. For Sunderland, my ender, 5.5 million, started up front, took a penalty, which would have been really interesting, apart from he missed it. So I don't know if he's going to be on penalties after that. Guillou, who's obviously 4.5 million, not in the squad. I don't think that's anything to worry about just yet. They've got another game today, so he might be involved there. But obviously, he's not joined the club that long ago, and I'll talk about him a bit more in a minute. So don't be completely put off putting him into your squad. Lefay also wasn't in the squad. Now, the reason that's interesting, even though they've got another game today, is that team they put out was pretty much first choice. So I saw some talk on social media that maybe there's just something going on with his future, and we're not quite sure, whether he's going to be involved from the off. So we'll have to keep an eye over this next week. But if you're looking at Lefay for 5 million, you want someone from Sunderland, definitely look at Xhaka instead. He's going to be nailed. He's going to play 90 minutes as much as possible. He will take some set pieces. And who knows, if my ender doesn't take the next penalty and it's not Guillou, maybe Xhaka will step up and take them as the captain. Then for Burnley, Dubravka wasn't in the squad. Probably wouldn't panic about that just yet. Estev started as we expected. And then their attackers are probably just worth ignoring, to be honest. For Leeds, Peru started up front, who's a 5.5 million forward in FPL and probably first choice for penalties as well. So that's a good sign for game week 1. The problem is there's still lots of talk that Leeds will go out and sign a new number 9. So I don't know how long term his minutes will be good for. But maybe if you're thinking very short term, you could look at him, especially for bench boost game week 1. Perry started in goal, 4.5 million, so the Darlow dream is over. Don't look at him if you want a playing 4 million goalkeeper. It's probably got to be Dubravka. And then Stack started in midfield, who's another 5 million option, took some corners and free kicks. I think he scored as well. So possibly an option, could pick up some defensive contributions. But honestly, I'm finding it really difficult to look past Dewsbury Hall now for the same price. But the one thing is, around 5 and 5.5, we've definitely got some good options to look at this season. Fulkrug started up front for West Ham again. Wilson wasn't in the squad. It looks very clear right now Fulkrug is first choice and going to start plenty of minutes. I don't know if Callum Wilson will even be able to get himself fit to play regular games. Fulkrug did score, but what I thought was more interesting is that he played up to 87 plus minutes. That's good for his fitness going into the season. I still don't know if I'd fully be confident in him staying fit after last year. But at 6 million, he's definitely an option in that category and probably better than Barry at Everton. Potts started in midfield again, 4.5 million. Lots of minutes during pre-season, but I suspect that might be an area that West Ham sign a player. So I don't know. I mean, if you're a West Ham fan, let me know in the comments below. I don't know if we can rely on that, but potentially at 4.5, we have an option. And Hermansen has now been signed. He didn't play yesterday. It was Areola. He's only recently signed, but presumably he's been brought in to be first choice. So for me, unless unless Graham Potter comes out and says Hermansen's definitely going to start game week 1, I'd probably ignore both him and Areola. For Brentford, Kelleher apparently has a minor injury. Brentford do have another game on Sunday, so we'll see if he's involved. That's one to monitor over this week because he's the most popular goalkeeper in FPL right now. And obviously, if he's got a minor injury or is any way of doubt going into game week 1, just don't risk it. There's loads of other 4.5s you can buy. Thiago started number 9. Didn't do that well, by all accounts, from people that watched the game. At least that's what they're saying. Got good enough minutes. I think he'll start number 9. I still think he's an option, but there are some risks there, as I've already talked about in other videos. Lewis Potter, who's a 5 million defender in FPL, started left wing. And Carvalho, who's a 5 million midfielder, started right wing. I don't know if they're going to keep playing there long term. Sharda also had a bit of an injury, but it sounds like it's going to be a minor one. I suspect Thiago will be 9, Sharda will be first choice left wing, and then right wing is up for debate, but they are being linked to Dango Utara, who I'll talk about later. He could play left or right, even centrally as well, but I think he'll mostly be brought in to play in one of those wider roles. So if Utara signs, I suspect it'll be Sharda, Thiago, Utara first choice, and Lewis Potter and Carvalho probably won't play that often, but they're ones to monitor. But Arsenal, Gyökeres started and scored a header. Apparently scored no headers last year for Sporting. Havertz was on the bench. He came on and scored as well. Arteta spoke about the fact they can play in the same team and that it's good to have competition. I was pretty confident Havertz would start game week 1, but the fact that he picked up a little bit of an injury, was only on the bench for this game, and now Gyökeres has started twice in a row, I'm pretty confident Gyökeres will start game week 1. Is it enough for me to pick him? Probably not personally. Gabriel started, he's back. Interestingly, Timber was right back and Calafiori was left back. For me, I think any defender outside of Gabriel and Saliba is a major risk. Because I think before that game yesterday, people would have told me that Lewis Skelly left back, Ben White right back. When I mentioned that Timber, was pretty much first choice anytime he was fit last year, I had so many comments on whatever video I spoke about that in, saying that Ben White's first choice right back. I think that's nonsense. I really don't think he is. And even if he is going to play the majority of games, you've got Timber that can play there as well. So you've got 4 players for 2 spots. It's just too much of a risk. My bet is that Timber will play the majority of games he's fit for, like he did last season. But I still don't think it's worth the risk. If you're going to go for an Arsenal defender, just pay the money for Gabriel. So for Wolves, Hoever is a 4 million defender in FPL, and he started right wing back once again. He's had plenty of minutes during pre-season in that position, which is promising. However, I would be cautious. They've got Gomez that can play that position as well already in the squad, and there's lots of talk about them signing another player for that position. So long term, I'm just not sure his minutes are secure enough. And obviously it's nice that he plays wing back, but you can go and get a nailed on 4 million defender from like Leeds or Burnley instead if you really need one. Arias started again. I think his minutes will be very good this season. 5.5 million midfielder. And for Wolves, not great for their fans. No wins in pre-season, but I wouldn't pay too much attention to that. Arias at 5.5, Strand-Larsen at 6.5, both worth considering for game week 1 squads. For Bournemouth, still no sign of Cliver. Apparently he's got a calf issue, which they hope would have been sorted by now, but it's not, and he's not training with the team. So he's definitely going to miss game week 1. I think there's a good chance he just misses the first 3 weeks, and we don't see him until after the international break, but I can't say that for sure. But in the short term, that means someone else needs to take penalties. Now, I think the last penalty to be taken by a Bournemouth player that wasn't Cliver was Semenyo in the FA Cup, but Evan Nielsen wasn't on the pitch. And last year, when Iraola was asked about penalty takers, he said that Cliver and Evan Nielsen were the 2, and then Cliver took a lot and Evan Nielsen didn't take any. And I think one that Evan Nielsen took, he missed. But my money is on Evan Nielsen taking penalties in the short term while Clivert's not on the pitch. It could be Semenyo. I'm going to guess Evan Nielsen. Krupi Jr., 4.5 million forward, started in what was the full strength-ish Bournemouth team. So that's promising for minutes. And if they sell Utara, then he might be involved quite a bit. So potentially there's competition there with Guiu for those of you that are going for a 4.5 million forward slot. Araujo and Hill both started. They're 4 million defenders. Will that continue? Possibly. Like Araujo played right back. They've got Smith there as well. And like with Hill, I suspect they're going to sign more defenders. So it looks good, a Bournemouth defender for 4 million. But again, there's probably risks with their minutes longer term. So I'm not sure I would go there. Plus, Bournemouth's defence has just been decimated. So I'm just drawn to going for like a Burnley or Leeds defender for security, because this is not a player you're going to want to play that often. And you can always come back to it, right? If after the international break, when the transfer window's shut, Hoever is starting right wing back for Wolves, or Araujo or Hill are starting full-time for Bournemouth, then you can just pick them up later. I probably wouldn't start with them. For Brighton, they had 2 games. Welbeck started in the team that wasn't... they basically had a couple of players that could be first choice-ish in the first team, like Welbeck, and then the second team was what you would consider probably mostly their full-strength team, and Jorginho Ruta started up front in that team. Now, for what it's worth, I think Welbeck will be the starting number 9 in game week 1, but Ruta might take some minutes off him. There might be the odd game where he starts in that position, and when he doesn't start 9, he can play 10 as well. I suspect he could even play off the right as well. So he's very versatile. £6 million midfielder in FPL. For someone that wants to take a punt, I would strongly consider him. Can I guarantee he will start every game? No. But when he does, it's probably going to be as a number 10, possibly some minutes in that number 9 role as well. The Gakpo, who was super popular when FPL first launched, 4.5 million, again, started left back in the main team. I'm pretty sure he'll start game week 1. And then it's just about his performances. Can he stay in the team? Hertzler talked him up quite a bit, that he's adapted quite quickly, and he scored, by the way. We know how attacking he can be. Again, if you want to take a punt, Brighton are probably the place to look. The Kuiper 4.5, Jorginho 6 in midfield. Labour out with an injury, which might not help their clean sheet chances, but it does sound like it's quite minor. For Fulham, it was weird because Muniz was listed on the team sheet, then they took it down and Raul Jimenez played instead. I suspect that Muniz will start game week 1, but there has been a bit of speculation he might leave. I'd probably just ignore it. Josh King, 4.5 million midfielder, started again in that number 10 role. And Harry Wilson started right wing, 5.5 million midfielder. Both of them in what looked to be the main 11. But again, Fulham did play 2 different matches. I'll say this. I think there's a good chance that King at 4.5 and Wilson 5.5 start game week 1. But Marco Silva did say they want to strengthen in like 3 to 4 positions. So long term, I still worry about their minutes. And someone said to me on a YouTube comment yesterday, just get Harry Wilson, stop worrying about it and transfer him out if it becomes a problem. My worry with that is, who wants to spend lots of transfers on 5.5 million midfielders? And the good fixtures are in game week 4 after the window shuts. So I'll probably still ignore them, but if you want to take a punt on a 4.5, maybe Josh King's the one. So for Man City, this is their one and only pre-season game following the Club World Cup. So we won't see any more matches for them ahead of game week 1. And the problem is they pretty much play 2 different teams in each half. So it's really hard to know exactly what their first choice 11 is going to look like going forward. Haaland was the only player that started the game and wasn't subbed at halftime, but he was subbed pretty quickly into the second half. And to be honest, we know Haaland is nailed anyway, so not an issue. When the team sheet came out, there was a bit of chaos because James Trafford, who's a 5 million goalkeeper, started. But again, Edison came off the bench and played the second 45. So I think both of those players probably have to be ignored unless Edison leaves, but it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. Interesting news, Vardiol, Foden and Rodri were not in the squad. For anyone that wants Rodri for defensive contributions, he's going to be out until at least after the first international break. So he's a no-go. Vardiol and Foden, it sounds like they're probably going to be in the squad for the Wolves game, but obviously there are some fitness concerns there. So that has a knock-on that there's very little competition for that left-back spot for Aït-Nouri. So for those of you that were on the fence about whether or not to take the risk, maybe that's your reason to go there. Vardiol is probably not going to be out long-term, and he probably will be in that squad for game week 1, by the way. But if there's any doubts there, you obviously don't pick him in FPL, and it makes Aït-Nouri a really interesting option. Probably someone I won't go with. I'm very boring. I don't want to take risks like that, because if they get benched, it really annoys me. But once I saw that Vardiol wasn't in the team, Aït-Nouri suddenly went up a little bit in my estimations. Reinders scored 2 goals, almost had a hat-trick as well. Now everybody wants him as their 5.5 midfielder. The thing is, I think in the second half, he basically played as a number 10. The opposition were also down to 10 men as well. So obviously that made it easier. Cherki started in that number 10 role in the first half. So I don't know if that's going to be Reinders' main position. With Rodri out, you would assume that Reinders is going to play quite a lot. But how deep will he be? I don't know. For those of you that want to take a punt, I'm pretty confident Reinders will be in the team very regularly and his minutes will be very good. But it's difficult to say that just because he scored 2 goals in a pre-season friendly in 45 minutes, that he's definitely going to keep that position long term. But I suppose for 5.5, like if you're happy with the rest of your team, let's say you've got like Salah, Palmer, Watkins, whatever, loads of strong players you're not going to transfer out anytime soon, maybe you do take a punt on that 5.5 midfielder. For Newcastle, Isak not in the squad. Like I've said this so many times, he is a major avoid. He's owned by over 20% of FPL managers right now. Get rid of him. Because whether he's at Newcastle or Liverpool, I don't think he's starting game week 1. And then they play each other in game week 2. So if he's gone to Liverpool, maybe there'll be like a gentleman's agreement that you don't play him in that match. And if he's at Newcastle and his head's gone, he wants to join Liverpool, but Newcastle are going to tell him he has to stay. Are they going to make him play Liverpool? Maybe, I don't know, because he's obviously such a big part of that team. But there's just too much uncertainty for 10.5. Gordon, 7.5 million, started number 9, went off with an injury, didn't look great. I don't think he's going to be fit to start the season. Newcastle are in a little bit of trouble because right now they've only got Osler to play number 9. Surely they'll sign someone else. Will that player be ready for game week 1? We'll have to keep an eye. But Gordon, don't go there. Someone's got to take penalties, by the way. If Isak and Gordon aren't on the pitch, I've got no idea who's next in line. Elanga started, and from what I could see, there was no Jacob Murphy. I don't know if Newcastle are playing again, but Elanga at 7 million, I just don't think is worth the money personally. Forest, 7 pre-season games, 1 goal, 5 clean sheets. They're really struggling to score. Maybe that XG from last season is finally catching up with them. Gibbs White not in the squad. Apparently it was just a personal matter, so he should be available game week 1. Igor Jesus, for those of you that want to take a punt, 6 million forward, started again with Chris Wood. That's happened quite a bit, so presumably it's going to happen in game week 1, but you'd assume that Wood is still first choice. So if they change that and only want to play with one kind of up front, it'll probably be Chris Wood. For Villa, they had a very mixed team to start, and then they made subs in the second half, and I think they've got another game today. Marlon started. Guessand was on the bench. Watkins was on the bench as well. Marlon's okay for 5.5. Personally, if I'm punting, I'm going Reinders at this point. Rodgers wasn't in the squad. He's a doubt for game week 1, but I think that there's confidence there that he will play. Let's see what Unai Emery says later on this week. And Bizot started in goal, 4.5 million. That's probably because he's going to start in game week 1 because Martinez is suspended. So one thing we've learned in pre-season is that if you want a £4 million goalkeeper on your bench, it's almost certainly got to be Dubravka. There's no other playing £4 million goalkeepers as it stands. And although he wasn't in the squad for Burnley's final game, presumably he's been brought in to be first choice. So unless you're absolutely set on bench boost game week 1, in which case you should probably go a bit safer with your goalkeepers, you just put Dubravka on the bench and just leave it, right? And have your main goalkeeper play most weeks. Even if Dubravka doesn't start until like game weeks 2, 3, 4, whatever it might be, there's no reason to put a different 4 million on your bench. You could argue that if he doesn't play at all and he's not first choice, he'll drop in price, fair enough. But the upside is worth it from having a playing goalkeeper just in case you need them. And also, if you're going to bench boost later, Dubravka has Sunderland at home in 2, Forest at home in 5, Leeds at home in 8. There are games where you could play him in as part of your bench boost. So if you're going 4 million on the bench, not as your main goalkeeper, just put Dubravka in. He did have a minor injury, by the way. That's what Eddie Howe said before he signed. But we can wait and see what is said this week. I think as soon as he's fine to play, he's going to be first choice for Burnley. Likewise, if you're going to go for a 4.5 million forward on your bench most weeks, then Mark Guiu for Sunderland is probably the one to go for. He didn't feature in that pre-season friendly I mentioned. Mayenda was up front, and I would expect Mayenda to start the first couple of games. So again, if you want to bench boost in game weeks 1 or 2, Mark Guiu is a bit of a risk from that regard, but you'd expect him to get some minutes. And I think out of all the 4.5 million forwards, he's probably the most likely to get you regular-ish minutes. Krupi Jr. at Bournemouth potentially could be that player as well. But Bournemouth have brought in so much money from sales. Surely they're going to go and reinforce in those attacking positions. So that would worry me a little bit. And I also think that at some point I might want 2 or 3 Bournemouth players. I'm unlikely to want 2 or 3 Sunderland ones. So Mark Guiu is not enough of an amazing option that you need to rip your team up. If you're on a 3-4-3 and you're really happy with your 3 forwards, don't change that. But if you're on a 3-5-2 and you want to go cheap on the bench, he's the one to get, in my opinion. So this news has been out for a few days now, but I haven't really spoken about it properly. And that is that Levi Colwill has suffered an ACL injury and is going to miss most of the season. Gutting for him because he did really well last year. And obviously it's a World Cup year this year too. So he would have wanted to push for the England squad. From an FPL point of view, it probably does make the Chelsea defence slightly worse. I do think sometimes when a single player gets injured, we do tend to overrate the effect it might have. But I guess you would say Chelsea's defence is slightly worse. If, for example, you had Sanchez in goal and you were really keen on going for Chelsea's goalkeeper, I wouldn't let this put you off. I don't think it's going to be that bad. But if you were on the fence where you weren't really sure about Chelsea already, then maybe this is enough to ignore them. In terms of whether other players in that defence now become an option, honestly, I would ignore everyone apart from Sanchez and Cucurella. They've signed Hato before this injury, who can play left back and left centre back, but I really don't think he's going to come in and just be first choice. I think Chelsea probably will go and sign another player. So in terms of like Chalobah or Tosin, I just don't think you can guarantee their minutes every single week. And like Reece James, Guessand, I just would not go there. So if you still want to buy a Chelsea defender, it's Cucurella at 6 million, or you go for the goalkeeper in Sanchez. I still think they'll be one of the top defences this year, but obviously this is a bit of a blow to those chances. So James Maddison is another player that suffered an ACL injury and is going to miss most of the season. Again, really gutted for him because he would have wanted to be pushing for that England squad for 2026 World Cup as well. In terms of FPL, I do worry a little bit about Spurs' attack in that they're missing a lot of creativity. Maddison's obviously out now. Kulusevski's out for a little while as well. I guess you got someone like Kudus from the right wing, but I don't know if his creativity is that great, to be honest, looking at the underlying numbers since he joined the Premier League. So maybe a little bit of a worry there. We'll see what team they put out in the Super Cup, I think is on Wednesday, and whether Solanke's fit. But obviously he hasn't featured much in the last few games, so he's probably an ignore. Sarr at Spurs has been talked about quite a lot. 5 million, played number 10 quite a bit. I think he'll probably start number 10 in the Super Cup and possibly game week 1. I don't think that's a position he's going to play regularly enough. I think either someone like Bergvall might come in or they'll just sign someone else because they are kind of down in terms of players in that position. Now, Sarr might play number 10 in some games for 5 million, and then if he doesn't play there, play deeper. But I think, and please correct me if you're a Spurs fan and I'm wrong about this, I don't think he would be completely nailed. So I think for 5 million, I'd probably rather go to Dewsbury Hall, although there are obviously some risks there as well, or maybe like a Xhaka. And also you take up a Spurs spot. I guess at some point you might want a defender and Kudus and Solanke or something like that. So Sarr is potentially interesting, but I've just got a feeling it's going to be a short-term pick only. Solanke I've already mentioned. Maddison injury obviously might increase Porro's interest a little bit because he'll take more set pieces, so therefore will be a bit more attacking. I still worry about Spurs' defence, so I'm not sure how many clean sheets there are, but the fixtures are good first 8, apart from City away in 2. I'm probably going to start with Porro, play him in game week 1, then either sell him to Munoz in game week 2 or sell him to Munoz in game week 4. And if I get stuck with him, the fixtures are quite good afterwards. So there's part of me that wants to go for a Spurs defender because the fixtures are good, but I am a little bit worried about how bad they were last year and that I don't think that will necessarily dramatically increase this year. There will be some uplift, but I'm not sure it'll be a massive amount. But Porro will be a bit more attacking with no Maddison, you'd expect. So Aston Villa have made an attacking signing, Guessand from Nice, who's been priced at 6.5 million by FPL and listed as a midfielder. I think at 6.5 million there is potential value there, but it's not a low enough price for me to risk it in game week 1 because there will be doubts around whether or not he will start. But his underlying numbers in the French league last year were decent. 0.32 expected goals per 90, 0.19 expected assists. If he can replicate anywhere close to that in the Premier League, he will be a good pick at 6.5 once we know he's in the first choice 11. I wouldn't be completely surprised if he's thrown in straight away, but obviously there has to be some doubt there. He's very versatile, can play left wing, right wing, and centre forward. Not quite sure where he'll be used in that Villa team. My guess is off the right mostly, but again, Unai Emery might deploy him in other positions. Interestingly, I saw a tweet from Jacob Tanswell, who covers Aston Villa for The Athletic. He played over 50% of his games last year at centre forward. Now, I'm not for 1 minute scaremongering anyone into not picking Ollie Watkins, but we do have kind of evidence from last year that Unai Emery doesn't always want to use him. Duran got lots of minutes before he was sold at the start of the season. Marcus Rashford came in, whose primary position is left wing, and he started number 9 ahead of Watkins. So maybe at some point Guessand will do that as well, but I think that's not where he's been brought in to provide cover initially. I think Watkins will still start unless they sign another number 9. So Watkins is still a good pick at 9 million. So Guessand, decent enough at 6.5. Probably not one for game week 1 unless you're someone that really wants to take some punts. So I wanted to talk about some of the ongoing transfer speculation because it could have an impact on some of the players you're looking to pick in FPL. And it's worth saying the transfer window doesn't shut until after game week 3. So some of these moves could happen after game week 1. Isak is the biggest one. He's an absolute ignore, as I've said many times now. But also he has an impact on Ekitike at Liverpool. So if Isak comes in, Ekitike's minutes are all of a sudden not very good. And the problem with Liverpool players, if you're not sure about their minutes, is they've got Newcastle away in 2 and Arsenal at home in 3. Now, don't get me wrong. I like Wirtz. I potentially like Gakpo. I'll talk about him in a minute. I like Salah. I like Van Dijk because they're long-term options and they could do well against Newcastle away and Arsenal at home. But if you've got Ekitike at 8.5 million and he starts against Bournemouth in game week 1, and then he starts against Newcastle, but Isak comes in, so you don't know whether he's going to start game week 3. He almost certainly doesn't start game week 4 onwards. Then you've got a problem. So I think Isak has to be ignored. And for that reason, probably Ekitike as well. And again, I'm recording this before the Community Shield. Ekitike might go and score a hat-trick and look great. But until Newcastle or Eddie Howe come out and say Isak is definitely starting, I'd be really worried about both of those players. Or sorry, yeah, definitely staying, if he's definitely staying at Newcastle. Visser, 7.5 million forward, could be amazing wherever he ends up. I don't think it's going to be at Brentford, and so that's why I quite like Thiago at 6 million. But also keep an eye on where Visser goes. If he goes to Newcastle as first choice number 9, great option at 7.5 million, could potentially get penalties as well. Utara, £6 million midfielder, looks like he's leaving Bournemouth, or has told them he wants to go. Brentford apparently is where he might end up. I quite like him. Brentford's fixtures are not that bad. And if he's going to be first choice in that team, which presumably he would be, because he's not first choice at Bournemouth, so presumably he's moving to get minutes, I quite like him at 6 million. He put up 0.39 expected goal involvement per 90. 0.39 expected goals per 90, 0.14 expected assists. I think he's the Mbermo replacement. And if so, 6 million is quite an exciting price, but we need to see him move first, and we need to see a few games to make sure he's first choice, I would say. And also that has an impact on Carvalho, etc., who I mentioned earlier. Zabani, there are still links moving him from Bournemouth. I don't think anyone's picking him anyway right now. He's 0.5%, but it just puts even more doubts on the Bournemouth defence. They could literally lose 4 out of their 5 backline last year. Kepa's gone, Howson's gone, Kirkes is gone, and now Zabani might go as well. It does probably mean Senesi at 4.5 million is absolutely nailed. I just worry about Bournemouth a little bit because of the amount of players they're losing. They haven't reinforced too much right now. Nicholas Jackson, 6.5 million. The talk from people like Fabrizio Romano is he will leave Chelsea this summer. Will he go to a Premier League club? I don't know. But keep an eye on that one. If Nicholas Jackson goes to pretty much any club and is nailed on for 6.5, he's an amazing option, in my opinion. Frustrating at times, yes, but he gets chances, he gets goals. He scored 24 goals in his first 2 seasons at Chelsea and wasn't necessarily playing week in, week out. And Garnacho, he's being linked away from Man United. No one's picking him right now. But if he does go to Chelsea, which is the rumoured destination, then obviously you've got issues around players like Neto, Gittins, etc., and their minutes. Again, it's another reason I would avoid Chelsea attackers for the most part, apart from Palmer and maybe obviously João Pedro, because if Nicholas Jackson goes, João Pedro's only got competition from Delap, and that makes João Pedro a better option. Another thing we've learned in pre-season is that Cody Gakpo might be a genuine option for game week 1 squads. 7.5 million midfielder in FPL, and as it stands, I just don't see who else is going to start in that left wing position. They don't really have anyone senior there. Now, anytime I mention that, someone always points out that they've got this kid called Rio Enguimoa. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. I do apologise. 16-year-old, great talent coming through, might break into the first team this year. That is definitely a possibility, but I find it hard to believe that he's going to get regular minutes in the Premier League. So as it stands, that is Gakpo's position. Now, they might set up in a way where they've got a few more central players on the pitch and they rely on Kirkes to provide the width, and Gakpo does miss out at times. But that's not something I see Arne Slot going for regularly. I think Gakpo will start Bournemouth at home and probably Newcastle away and probably Arsenal at home as it stands. The only slight worry, again, like I spoke about with Ekitike, is if they sign a new left winger, then obviously there's competition for minutes. So who that player is will determine how many minutes Gakpo is going to lose, especially when Champions League and stuff like that comes around. But honestly, at the 7.5 million price bracket, Gibbs White, if you want to go for a fixtures play, not bad. Eze, there's speculation he might go to Arsenal still. Although, to be honest, the longer that doesn't happen, the less likely it seems to me that it would happen. But it's still potential. There's not too many options at 7.5 in midfield that are kind of stand out right now anyway. So if you want to take a punt, you've got Gakpo. And worst case scenario is obviously someone else comes in and starts taking his minutes, or this Rio kid is so good that he starts, which again, I don't think is going to happen. And then you can shift him down to any 6.5 million midfielder. So it's probably not one for me because I like going with certain starters for like 75 to 90 minutes in most cases as much as I can. But I really don't think he's a terrible option. Like last year, I didn't go for Diaz or Gakpo. I was just too worried about them. But this season, I can see more reason to go for Gakpo until they've signed a left winger because it just hasn't happened yet. Anyway, I'm going to leave that one there. If there's anything I've missed, leave me a comment below. What have you learned during pre-season? I'll try and cover some of that stuff in other videos this week. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like, especially if you found it useful, and hit that subscribe button. I would love to hit 500k before the end of the season. See you tomorrow.